Today, our mission is to take a closer look at behavioral economics, this surprising world where the choices you make are less about logic and more about, the context you're in.
That's exactly it. We're diving into this gap between who we think we are, these perfectly rational beings, the econs, and who we actually are,
Humans.
humans.
Right.
We're brilliant, but we're also predictably irrational.
And the sources for this deep dive are really a guide to understanding those predictable flaws. Because if you
Yeah.
understand them, you can start designing environments that help us make better decisions.
And that design has a name. It's choice architecture.
Right.
It's this idea that every single environment, from a website to a cafeteria line, has a designer.
Mm.
And that design is going to influence your behavior. You can't escape it.
And the power of that context can be, it's kind of stunning. Let's take that classic example of Carolyn, the food services director for a huge school district.
Oh, yeah, this is a great one.
She runs this experiment. She doesn't change the menu. She doesn't change the prices, nothing like that. She just rearranges the food.
Just the layout. The desserts are moved, the carrots are in a different spot than the French fries, the healthy milk is at eye level. She's being intentional about the environment.
And just by doing that, she could swing consumption of certain foods by up to 25%.
25%. Think about that. No cost, just a nudge towards healthier food.
And that's our mission today, to explore these nudges, these little interventions that steer us toward better choices without, and this is key, without forbidding any options.
Right, they don't really change the economic incentives either. They're just subtle shifts that work with our psychology, not against it.
The philosophy behind all this is called libertarian paternalism, which I have to say, it sounds like a complete contradiction.
It does, yeah. Paternalism is guiding people, but libertarian is all about freedom. So, what gives?
How can you be guided and free at the same time?
Well, the libertarian part is crucial. It means you always have freedom of choice. You can still grab those French fries if you really want them.
Okay.
The paternalistic part just means the choice architects, the designers, are trying to steer you toward an outcome that you yourself would probably want in the long run. They're just setting better defaults for us error-prone humans.
And to do that, we have to first understand the error-prone mind. Let's start with this idea of a dual system in our brains.
Okay, so we basically have two cognitive engines. First, there's the automatic system. System 1.
The gut reaction.
Exactly. It's fast, it's instinctive, it's Homer Simpson,
And then you've got the reflective system, or system 2.
which is your Mr. Spock.
Mm.
It's deliberate, it's conscious, it does the heavy lifting when you're, say, solving a math problem.
The problem is the automatic system is so fast, it just blurts out an answer before the reflective system can even, get its boots on.
We can actually test this.
Yeah.
For everyone listening, let's see which system answers first for you.
All right, let's do the bat and ball question. Ready? A bat and a ball together cost $1.10.
Okay.
And the bat costs exactly $1 more than the ball.
So,
Right.
how much does the ball cost?
And I'm willing to bet your automatic system just screamed 10 cents.
It's the intuitive answer, but it's also wrong. Now, let your reflective system, your Spock, actually do the math.
If the ball was 10 cents, then the bat would have to be $1.10. That adds up to $1.20. Too much.
Right. The correct answer is that the ball costs 5 cents, and the bat costs $1.05. That gets you to $1.10.
And that little gap, that moment it takes to override your wrong gut feeling, that's the whole field of behavioral economics right there.
It shows that our brains use these mental shortcuts, or heuristics, that can lead us into these systematic biases.
Let's unpack 3 of the big ones, pioneered by Tversky and Kahneman, starting with anchoring.
Anchoring. This is where we rely way too much on the first piece of information we get, the anchor, even if it's totally irrelevant.
It's such a powerful nudge. Think about a charity asking for donations. If the options are, say, $100, $250, and $1,000.
That first number, the $100 anchor, is going to pull the average donation way up compared to if the option started at $10. It just sets the scale in your mind.
And it works even if the number is totally random. In one exercise, people were asked to guess the population of Milwaukee, but first they had to write down the last 3 digits of their phone number.
And people with high-ending phone numbers consistently gave higher estimates for the population. It's completely irrational, but the anchor just sticks.
The second big one, and you see this everywhere, is the availability heuristic.
Right. We judge how likely something is by how easily we can think of an example. If it's easy to recall, if it's available, we think it's more common than it is.
This has huge real-world effects. After a big earthquake, what happens? Sales of earthquake insurance go through the roof.
Exactly. Because the memory is so vivid, so terrifyingly available. But then, as that memory fades, insurance sales drop right back down, even though the risk hasn't changed at all.
It also messes with our sense of risk. Homicides get tons of media coverage, right? So they're very available in our minds.
Which makes people much more afraid of being murdered than of dying by suicide, even though in many countries, suicides are about 20 times more frequent. Our fear is shaped by the news cycle, not the data.
And the third one is representativeness. This is our tendency to judge things based on how much they match a stereotype or an expected pattern.
We're pattern-seeking machines. We see patterns even in randomness.
The story about the German V-1 bombs in World War II is just fascinating.
It is. Londoners looked at maps of where the bombs hit, and they saw clusters. And they immediately thought, wow, the Germans have incredible precision targeting.
Some people even thought the empty spots on the map must be where German spies lived.
But then they did the statistical analysis, and the strikes were completely random. It was just people seeing a pattern where none existed, because they expected a targeted attack to look patterned.
These shortcuts all feed into what is maybe the most powerful force in our daily lives, the status quo bias.
Inertia, the tendency to do nothing.
And this inertia is supercharged by something called loss aversion.
We don't just dislike losing things, we hate it. Psychologically, a loss feels about twice as bad as an equivalent gain feels good.
So finding $20 is nice.
But losing $20 is awful.
You see this with the endowment effect. If I give you a coffee mug, you suddenly value it way more than you would have a minute before.
Oh, absolutely. Studies show that once you own the mug, you'll demand about twice as much money to sell it as someone else would be willing to pay to buy it from you. It's yours, and giving it up feels like a loss.
So when you put all this together, you see why default options are so incredibly powerful.
They tap right into that status quo bias and loss aversion. If the default is to automatically renew a magazine subscription.
The path of least resistance is to do nothing. And canceling feels like you're actively losing something, so defaults become the ultimate nudge.
So if we know our minds are, in a way, battling themselves, how do we design things to help the planner side of us win out?
That's the perfect question. It gets us into this internal struggle over self-control. It's the planner, our Mr. Spock, versus the impulsive doer, our Homer Simpson.
And Homer usually wins in the moment.
He does. Remember that great story about the dinner party with the big bowl of cashews? The host puts them out, and the guests just start inhaling them.
Right, and they realize they're about to ruin their appetite for dinner, so they actually ask the host to take the cashews away.
And they thank him for it. That's the amazing part. They are happier with fewer options because it removes a temptation their planner knows their doer can't handle.
This is what's called the hot-cold empathy gap. When you're in a cold state, like planning your diet for the week on a Sunday morning, you're perfectly rational.
You'll eat salads all week, no problem.
But then the dessert cart rolls by on Wednesday night. You're in a hot state of temptation, and that cold state plan just completely underestimates the power of that immediate craving.
And so much of our consumption is just mindless. The stale popcorn experiment is a perfect example.
It's incredible. They gave moviegoers these huge buckets of 5-day-old stale popcorn. It tasted awful.
And people still ate huge amounts of it, just because they had a massive bucket in front of them. The container size, which is a form of choice architecture, drove consumption, not taste or hunger.
Another really weird way our brains work is with mental accounting.
Right. Logically, money is fungible. A dollar is a dollar.
But we don't treat it that way. We put labels on it.
The anecdote about Dustin Hoffman having jars of money for rent and food is perfect. You can't use the rent money for food, even if the food jar is empty.
And we see this in a really costly way with credit cards. Millions of people carry high-interest credit card debt, say, at 18%.
Well, at the same time, they have money sitting in a savings account earning, what, less than 5%?
Logically, they should pay off the debt immediately, but they don't. And it's because they're using that separation as a self-control strategy. They know if they drain their savings, they'll just run the card back up again. It's a costly but effective way to keep the doer from spending that cushion.
Of course, we aren't making these decisions in a vacuum. We're also incredibly influenced by social nudges.
We are herd animals. We look at what others are doing to figure out what we should be doing.
The famous Ash Line experiment showed this so clearly. You put one person in a room with a bunch of actors.
And the actors all start giving the obvious wrong answer to a simple question, like which line is longest.
And the test subject conforms to the group's wrong answer between 20 and 40% of the time. It's just immense social pressure.
You can use that for good, though. The Don't Mess with Texas anti-litter campaign wasn't about fines. It was about leveraging Texan pride and this idea that we don't litter here.
Or that study on tax compliance in Minnesota. They just told some non-compliant taxpayers that 90% of their fellow Minnesotans already paid their taxes in full.
And compliance rates shot up. Just knowing this social norm was a powerful nudge.
And sometimes the nudge can be tiny, a so-called channel factor.
The Yale tetanus shot study is the classic. They gave students all the information about why they should get a shot. But for one group, they also have them pull out their schedule and plan a route to the health center.
Just that tiny act of planning the path.
Vaccination rates increased ninefold. Ninefold. It shows that sometimes the biggest barrier is just a tiny bit of friction.
So this all brings us back to how we can build better choice architecture on purpose. Back to that idea of libertarian paternalism.
Right. Steering choices for the better, but always preserving the freedom to choose.
So when do we need these nudges the most?
Well, it's usually in a few key areas. First, for decisions that are really difficult and infrequent, choosing a mortgage, a college, a spouse.
Things you don't get a lot of practice with.
Exactly. Second, when there's a time gap between the cost and the benefit, like exercise. The cost, the pain is now, but the benefit is years away. The doer hates that.
And third, when you get really poor feedback, you can eat a high-fat diet for decades and not get any negative feedback until it's way too late.
So if we know humans will make mistakes, the first principle of good design should be to expect error. Make your systems forgiving.
Oh, I love the contrast between the Chicago parking garage credit card slot and the Paris metro ticket.
It's perfect.
It's it.
The Chicago one has 4 ways to insert the card, but only one is right. It's designed to create errors. The Paris metro ticket works no matter how you stick it in. That's error-forgiving design.
Another principle is to improve mapping, helping people understand what their choice actually means.
Instead of telling me a camera has 12 megapixels, which is abstract, tell me the largest photo I can print with it. A 4x6. A poster. That maps a complex number onto a simple, understandable outcome.
And this idea led to the proposal for a recap system record, evaluate and compare alternative prices.
For things like cell phone plans or mortgages, companies would have to give you a simple report of your usage and fees. You could then upload that to a website and get a true apples-to-apples comparison, which is almost impossible to do now.
And we have to come back to the biggest nudge of all, defaults.
The power of the default setting is just. It's overwhelming. The best example is organ donation. In countries where you have to opt in to check a box to become a donor.
The rates are pretty low, around 42%.
But in countries where the default is to be a donor unless you actively opt out, the rates jump to over 82%.
That one little change, the placement of a check mark, saves thousands of lives a year. It's all because of inertia.
So let's look at how this plays out with some real-world policies. The Save More Tomorrow program, or SMART, is probably the greatest success story.
It was designed specifically to fight those two big barriers to saving for retirement, our bias for the present and our inertia.
The idea is just brilliant. You get automatically enrolled in the savings plan. But the key is your contribution rate only goes up when you get a pay raise.
So you never feel the pain of a smaller paycheck. You're just dedicating a piece of your future new money to savings. It doesn't feel like a loss today.
And the results were phenomenal. 78% of people stuck with it, and their savings rates went from around 3.5% to over 13.5%. It's a life-changing nudge.
But when policymakers forget about human psychology and just assume everyone is a perfectly rational econ, you can get disaster.
Look at what happened in Sweden when they privatized part of their social security system.
They gave people what they thought was a great thing: maximum choice. Citizens were encouraged to actively choose from 456 different investment funds.
456, it was overwhelming. And people made terrible choices. They piled into Swedish stocks, massively under-diversifying.
And worse, they fell for that representativeness bias. They just picked whatever fund had the best recent returns.
Right, so a huge number of people chased this one fund, Robur Aktiefond Kontura, that had gone up like 500%.
They invested at the absolute peak, and then the fund lost almost 70% of its value. It was a financial catastrophe caused by bad choice architecture.
We saw a similar problem with Medicare Part D in the U.S. Seniors were faced with up to 46 different drug plans.
Just total confusion. It got so bad, the government had to just randomly assign the poorest and sickest people to plans, which were often a terrible fit for them. The lesson is that more choice isn't always better.
So this brings us back to the big ethical question. If these nudges are so powerful, isn't this all just manipulation?
How do you guard against that?
The best answer is something called the publicity principle. It's an ethical rule that says the government should never adopt a policy that it isn't willing to publicly defend to its citizens.
So you have to be transparent. You have to be able to stand up and say, yes, we're nudging you in this direction, and here's why we think it's for your own good.
Exactly. That rule would ban something like subliminal advertising, which is manipulative because it's hidden.
But it would allow for a warning sign on the pavement in London that says, look right, for tourists.
Or calorie counts on a menu, the nudge is open, it's transparent, and it respects your ability to make the final choice.
So in the end, choice architecture isn't really optional. It's happening all the time, whether we notice it or not.
Right. The goal is just to make it good, to design systems that respect how humans actually behave, both the Homer and the Spock inside us. Good governance uses incentives and nudges, not just bans and mandates.
As you go through your day, just start to notice the choice architecture around you, what's nudging you, and where.
And here's one final provocative thought for you to take away. A mini nudge that could make our digital lives a little better.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Imagine if your email program had a civility check. If you type an email with angry or emotionally charged words, a little box pops up before you can hit send.
It doesn't stop you.
It doesn't stop you. It just says, this message seems angry. Are you sure you want to send it? It forces a 5-second pause.
A pause just long enough for your reflective system to catch up with your angry automatic system before you send that career-ending email.
It's a tiny bit of friction, a tiny nudge. So think about that. What's one small intentional change you could make in your own environment to give yourself a helpful nudge?